The afternoon sun streamed through the fragrant blooming lilacs that lined our shared fence. Their sweet, heady scent wafted gently into my backyard, where I was nurturing my small garden of herbs. I often spent my afternoons lost in the rhythm of watering and pruning, finding solace among the greens. Perhaps it was my way of escaping the encroaching silence of my empty home, or maybe it was simply the need to connect with something alive. As I tended to my plants, I glanced over at the small window of James's living room across the way. I had lived next door to him for 3 years, and our interactions had mostly been cordial, small talk over the fence, exchanging pleasantries during our occasional joint wine nights. He was a good guy, perhaps a bit of a recluse, but every now and then, I could see the flicker of warmth in his eyes that spoke of an underlying depth I longed to explore. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of laughter drifting from the house next door. It was James's voice, deep and inviting, and I found myself smiling. There was a certain charm to the way he moved through life, like a gentle melody that could soothe the most turbulent of souls. I wiped my hands on my gardening apron, debated whether to invite him over for a glass of iced tea, and then simply admired my basil with a shrug. But what I hadn't realized at first was how that moment of lingering admiration would unravel into something wholly unexpected. Later that evening, I was perched on my living room couch with a glass of Chardonnay, scrolling through my phone. Just as I settled in with the intention of binging on my latest favorite show, a flicker of movement caught my eye from James's window. I paused, heart quickening, drawn to the sight of him. He was backlit by the warm glow of his living room lamp, stretching out on the sofa, looking effortlessly handsome with his tousled hair and rolling sleeves. But the sight that struck me was the intimate nature of his position. There he was, exuding a kind of raw vulnerability that I had never seen before. My pulse raced. It wasn't just a sighting, it felt like an intrusion into an intimate moment. He was clearly lost in his thoughts, hand moving in a steady rhythm beneath the blanket that covered him. I felt flushed and coconut oil slick across my skin, a stirring of unexpected emotions unfurling within me. Watching him, witnessing his pleasure felt surreal. It was intimate in a way that left me both mesmerized and bewildered. Do I turn away? Should I knock? A mix of desire and morality swirled in my stomach. But instead of looking away, I found myself transfixed by the sight. The sound of his soft whimpers lingered in the air like an echo of something both private and shared. After a moment, I was jolted out of my reverie by an unexpected flash of guilt. This was wrong, spying on him, even accidentally. Just as I rose from my couch, he must have sensed me somehow, for he turned abruptly, his eyes locking with mine through the window. My heart nearly stopped. Panic coursed through me. I couldn't decide whether to laugh it off or disappear entirely. For a moment, we merely stared at each other, both frozen in the suspended space between embarrassment and undeniable tension. In a haze, I stumbled away from the window. My mind raced as I paced the room. Will this change everything? Am I a voyeur? Oh God, what now? But curious instincts, raw and powerful, compelled me to move towards his door. It was as if I were being pulled by threads thick with longing and intrigue. I hesitated before knocking on his door. My heart thumped like a drum in my chest, and I could almost convince myself that curiosity wasn't the only reason I was there. The door creaked open, revealing a bewildered James. He looked disheveled, yet still courtly, as he rubbed the back of his neck. "Laurel," he said, eyes widening in astonishment. Hi. Hey, I saw you," I stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. I was just, gardening." He swallowed hard, his cheeks flushing with color. There was an electric pulse between us that felt inexplicably real, and utterly vulnerable. "I'm sorry you, It's fine," I interrupted, my voice softer. It's normal. We all have moments." For a moment, we both stood there in silence, caught in that peculiar web of intimacy that pulled us closer together. The air was thick with something unspoken, something we were both afraid to name. "Do you want to come in?" he finally asked, his voice low and inviting. I nodded, unable to speak as I stepped into the sanctuary of his living room. The atmosphere was heavy with tension, and I could feel the weight of uncharted territory pressing in around us. He sat down on the couch, and I perched on the edge, carefully avoiding the space where he'd been previously sprawled. I usually don't do that kind of thing," he murmured, running his fingers through his hair, revealing a hint of nervousness. In front of people." "I didn't mean to intrude," I admitted, my gaze dropping to the floor. But then again, it was kind of, awakening in a way. The honesty spilled out of me before I even had a chance to rein it in. James chuckled softly, the sound warm and contagious. Awakening is a good word. I guess we both have our ways of, feeling things. I raised my brow, surprised at his openness. There was a magnetism in those shared moments of vulnerability, a spark of realization igniting something within me that had been dormant for too long. The world outside fell away, and for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Without really thinking, I shifted closer to him on the couch. Maybe we could talk about it? And just like that, the walls that had kept us apart began to dissolve. We spoke about our lives, our loneliness, and the unkindness of circumstances that pushed us into our solitary existence. With each shared anecdote, laughter erupted between us like fireworks, revealing the resonance of our souls. After a while, James found the courage to lean closer. His hand touched mine, sending ripples of electricity up my arm. "Can I be honest?" he asked, his voice low and inviting. "Always," I whispered, surrendering to the moment. "You're beautiful, Laurel," he confessed. "And I've always admired you from a distance." Suddenly the memories of stolen glances over the fence and shared smiles flooded back, creating a bridge where once sat only silence. "James," I breathed, locking my gaze with his. "I feel the same." And there, in that dimly lit space where two hearts once shackled by solitude finally met, everything felt possible. The connection transformed, no longer just a moment of vulnerability shared through a window, but now a journey of discovery ignited by passion, longing, and the unyielding desire for closeness. We moved together, breath intermingling. With his hand cradling my cheek, subtle brushstrokes against my skin ignited a warmth deep within me. The world outside faded, not with closed eyes, but with the vivid awareness that this moment was more than mere circumstance. It was a beginning, and it was ours. In the days to come, my garden would bloom brighter, nourished not only by the sun and water, but by the joy of shared companionship. James and I found in each other a bridge, a sanctuary meant to heal us both, from the outside world and ourselves. Love had come knocking, and together, we opened the door.